Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order for Washington County Coordinating Committee for December 12th. We're meeting here on Zoom. And did we end up with any visitor comments?
We haven't had anyone who signed up to speak in advance. We can give an opportunity if there's anyone who's in the attendees that would like to provide a comment. You can raise your hand now. Not seeing any hands raised, Chair.
Okay. Do we need to do any new introductions? I don't think we have any new members yet. That'll be next month for sure. Can we just roll into roll call then?
Let's do that. And I will go in order of alphabet by city, by jurisdiction. So for City of Banks, Mayor Jones.
Here.
Thank you. City of Beaverton, do we have a city rep? I'm not sure that we do yet. Okay, we'll stand by. Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
You. City of Durham, Mayor Sherrado. He's joined yet. City of Forest Grove, do we have Mayor Truax or Councilor Rippey?
Mayor Truax is here.
Excellent, thank you, sir. Good to see you. And for Hillsborough, I understand Mayor Callaway is attending the business summit today and may not be able to join us right away. Do we have
Actually, I'm getting texted that he is here via phone. I think he needs to be promoted.
Okay.
Last 40967.
Perfect. All right. So Teresa, can you do that? It'll be Mayor Callaway on the phone. Right. For King City, Mayor Fender. For Council President Paulson. Okay. City of North Plains, Mayor Linehan let me know earlier that she's also at the business summit and may not be able to attend. And do we have Councilor Paffin on board? I believe we do. Okay. For City of Sherwood, Mayor Mays.
Yep.
Thank you. City of Tigard, Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Thank you. City of Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Here.
Thank you. City of Wilsonville, Mayor Fitzgerald.
Present.
Thank you. And for Washington County, Commissioner Fye.
Present.
Thank you. And I see our Metro representative, Councilor Rosenthal, is with us. Thank you.
Present.
And from ODOT, Matt Freitag is with us.
Yep, I'm here. I will need to depart at about 12:30.
Okay, thank you. And I don't believe we have a port representative, Emerald Vogue. Okay. And TriMet, do we have Tara O'Brien with us? Okay, maybe not yet. So we'll continue to watch the attendees list and watch for others that may be joining us. Thank you.
And Stephen, you caught that Mayor Lacey's here?
Oh, no, Mayor Beatty, thank you for joining.
Okay. I also wanted to draw everybody's attention. We had the rosters and alternates and our 2023 calendar was attached to the agenda. So if folks have that, an acknowledgement that we'll be getting new representatives from Sherwood, Forest Grove, and Tigard next month. So make sure that folks update if there's appropriate your alternates and get those to Stephen and Chris. Okay. Under our action items, first up is consideration of the meeting minutes from November 14th. Any updates, adjustments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Mays. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mayor Schneider beat you to the draw. Mayor Jones. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Looks like we've got that one covered. Okay, that takes us up to a transportation development tax expenditure request. And I'm pretty sure that's City of Tigard. Yeah, we got City of Tigard. $2.1 million. And I think Aaron's gonna kind of introduce us to that, and then we'll have questions afterwards. Aaron, you've got the floor.
Aaron, before you start, I have a question for Mayor Beatty. Mayor Beatty, are you zooming in from the White House?
No, I'm back in my office, so I appreciate that. I'm in the People's House of Beaverton, which feels more important.
Thank you. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Planning and Development Services Manager for Washington County, and we have a TDT expenditure request for your consideration today. The City of Tigard is asking to use up to $2.9 million of their TDT funds on 4 different projects. County staff reviewed the expenditure request and determined that these projects are all eligible for TDT expenditure, and the WCCC TAC recommended approval at their last meeting. We have Tigard staff here today if there are any questions about the specific projects. And with that, any questions?
Hey, usually there's usually pretty perfunctory, to use the term that
Move to approve request.
moved by Mayor Mays. Do I have a second?
Well, I'll definitely second it if no one else is going to.
You're gonna go ahead and take that opportunity. Thanks, Jason. So moved by Mayor Mays, seconded by Mayor Schneider. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Looks like we got a unanimous on it. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay. Something meat and potatoes here. Information discussion, Oregon Toll Program update. So, I didn't see any tomatoes fly yet. Okay, great. Update on the scoping process for the Regional Mobility Pricing Project, RMPP.
No.
Wow, we're going into the environmental review comment opportunities. So basically this is talking about tolling on all the lanes, right, to the rest of 205 and I-5 between the Boone Bridge and the Columbia River. The scoping period is the time to comment on the scope of the project and include proposed actions for study. What areas included for study and how is that evaluated? The information was shared with the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, which I'm sure we will hear feedback from Frank on in December. So Brendan Wynn, Urban Mobility Office Director. Is he here to present? I don't know if I saw him.
Mayor Dalen, I'm here. He got pulled away at the last second, but
I was wondering if it wouldn't be you, Garrett.
Yep.
Okay, you've got the floor, Garrett. Thanks.
yeah, definitely. And while I'm talking and we're bringing up the presentation, could you promote Zoe Westenberg? She's going to help present this with me as well.
All right, I've got her promoting now.
And
Thanks, Stephen.
yeah, thank you. And could we pull up the slides here and I'll do some. Well, with all that food talk at the start, I was able to, because apologize, Brendan got pulled out at the last minute, but I was able to throw some pasta salad in right before the meeting. So not the meat and potatoes like you were talking about, but at least something, a nice little meal prepped we had for the week.
Product
Howdy, Zoe.
placement.
Yep. And Teresa, are you sharing the slides or are we?
We may be, Garrett, we may be having some technical challenges, so I think I will try to share my screen here.
Okay.
Bear with me 1 second. Okay. Screen.
If Zoe's promoted, I think she could share them, Stephen, so you can watch.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there we
Okay.
go. Oh, you're doing, okay. All right, Stephen, I think this, did you draw the one from the packet? Because
Yes.
ODOT sent a new version this morning.
Oh, does someone have that one available?
I
Yeah.
think it was just some small text edits. I think we can head forward
Okay.
with this and we'll make sure y'all get
Okay.
that.
All right, that's great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Garrett.
And do you need to say anything, Chris, to frame this up, or do you want me to jump
I
in?
do not, I'm going to turn to you. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. This is, we're here to talk partly about tolling, but what comes with tolling is a comprehensive strategy to address our region's transportation needs, what ODOT can play with y'all and others into making this a better future. Next slide. So as a part of this, strategy that isn't just tolling, but it's kind of what are you getting for that tolling, and what are you getting as a part of this larger investment strategy that ODOT's looking at and doing it with partnership. Reduce traffic jams using that congestion pricing with variable rate tolling, the decrease in highway bottlenecks and those improvement projects, an investment in strategic multimodal transportation investments, not just on the highway, but also on local roads to avoid any of that future diversion or that new rerouting that would occur in the future. A really critical need to modernize our region, specifically our bridges, to withstand the Cascadia level earthquake. And to, with the dwindling gas tax, to develop a sustainable funding to preserve and improve our transportation system. So that's a part of this whole package that you're getting with tolling and other sources through the urban mobility strategy. Next slide. So this is a map we usually talk about. Again, it's, tolling is within a context of this strategy. I just wanted to pause here for a second to say that, we've been following and have long heard and working on the issues that Washington County and the cities raise with the tolling projects and with the urban mobility strategy, specifically around not just being able to build our way out of this, but having a true multimodal system that addresses some of the real gaps that we see, specifically in east-west connections between job locations and where people live. Looking at how we move, we're a net export state, so definitely looking at the business component of this. So Zoe in a second is going to talk about some of the analysis that we're doing and how we're setting up the regional mobility pricing project. But we definitely are not just looking at big businesses and big job centers, but actually small businesses and how they interact with the system as well. Definitely for the communities that live adjacent to I-5, and we're thinking of the Wilsonvilles, the Tigard's, those along the way, looking at those diversionary routes and making sure we study that and look at that and how we set up that pricing system. But we know it's not just those communities, it's also Beaverton, Cornelius, North Plains. A lot of folks that live out there are going to have to use this system to get through and across the region. So we want to keep that in mind. And then finally, with the tolling program, we are committed to, on day one of tolling, having a low-income program in place. Now we're working through the details of that. I'll provide a little comment at the end there. But in addition to that low-income program, we're also looking at what are those commuting patterns for folks around the region, and how can we price and invest in a way that actually increases accessibility to more jobs, to more education, to more healthcare, and lessens that burden, increases that access. And when I really think about Washington County and the types of jobs that are out here, where I work, I worked in Tualatin for 2 years and worked on transportation issues, is that the jobs that are available out here are life-changing jobs, are these substantially income, the types of jobs that we want to connect folks to. And so bridging that gap and getting people to jobs that are just awaiting people in some of these big industrial job centers is a key part of what you see here on the map in the urban mobility strategy. So with that, I do have a small video, and Stephen, maybe we'll have to bring down the screen share and somebody else can share it, but I do want to show a small video about how tolling would work and how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, is that something that Zoe might be able to share? I give you.
Are you able to?
See.
Yes, I can. I should be able to share.
Should I hum the Jeopardy theme? Does that help?
Sorry, I'm not very used to Teams. Can someone tell me how I share my screen? Or sorry, I'm not used to Zoom.
Okay, hopefully you might have a share screen tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, can you all see that okay?
Yep,
Yes.
just popped up.
Okay, great.
To reduce traffic congestion and help make needed transportation improvements, ODOT is studying tolling on all lanes of I-5 and I-205 in and around Portland. We know that tolling is new to Oregon. Although many decisions still need to be made, we wanted to show you what an all-electronic tolling system could look like in this area. First, a driver sets up an account to pay for tolls. Drivers could go online, or we'll have help available. Once an account is set up, there are various payment options, including cash or connecting to a credit card for ongoing charges. With an account, drivers receive a toll tag, which is a sticker that attaches to a car's windshield. When driving on a toll road, vehicles go under a structure with equipment that reads the tag. The toll is then deducted from the connected account. There are no toll booths or buckets to throw change into, and drivers never stop or slow down. Drivers on our toll roads always keep moving. If no tag is detected, a temporary photo is taken of the license plate, and the registered driver will receive a bill in the mail. How would drivers know how much the toll is? ODOT plans to post the cost on road signs and on the internet. Toll rates will have a set schedule and vary based on time of day, with higher toll rates during morning and afternoon rush hours and lower tolls at other times of day. Tolls are set in advance and will not change unexpectedly based on traffic. Depending on your income, you may be eligible for a discount or other kinds of rebates or credits. To learn more and get involved, visit OregonTolling.org.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Zoe here in a second. But one, I wanted to show that video just because, you know, videos are fun and sometimes you just get to hear presentations. We don't get to it. But secondly, I know from Mayor Shirato and Mayor Snyder and others in the past have really given us good feedback on how to improve our communication and do it in a way that's clearer and more engaging. So thank you for your past comments. I think it's that type of feedback that's helped us create some more educational and engagement videos there, and would love to, you know, continue that kind of feedback loop going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Zoe, who's going to walk us through some slides that dive us into the Regional Mobility Pricing Project and why it's at a key kind of public comment period right now in the development of that project.
Thank you, Garrett.
Yep.
Awesome. I should be able to go ahead and share my screen and run through the slides. So can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, we can see it just fine, Zoe.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us today. Really appreciate the time. My name is Zoe Wiesenberg. I work with Garrett on the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. So I'm here to just talk through that project, as well as most importantly, invite you all to participate in the scoping comment period for that project. So first off, we want to cover the purpose statement for the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. So this purpose statement has been under development since August of 2021. We've received a lot of input over the last year and a half and have landed on this draft purpose statement that you see here on your screen as we head into the environmental phase for the project. So I'll just read this out loud quickly. The purpose of the project is to use congestion pricing on I-5 and I-205 to reduce traffic congestion on these facilities in the Portland, Oregon metropolitan area in a manner that will generate revenue for transportation system investments. All right, so that's kind of our overarching purpose statement that will guide the project throughout this next environmental phase. We also have what we call a proposed action. So I'll walk through that now. And the proposed action basically means what congestion pricing would look like and what we're proposing to study. And for those of you familiar with environmental terms, it's synonymous with a build alternative, what you might hear in other places, but we call it a proposed action since we aren't proposing to build anything other than gantries.
Not quite true.
All right, so what are we proposing? We're looking at a specific study area. So tolls are being studied between, on I-5 between the Columbia River and the Boone Bridge in Wilsonville, and on I-205 from the Columbia River to where I-205 intersects with I-5 in Tualatin, Oregon. And then depending on the study, how the next year and a half goes, the actual tolled area might be reduced before tolls are implemented. And then, as you might know, there are two other toll projects proposed in the Portland metro area on I-5 and I-205. The first is the I-205 toll project down in the south. You can see that in orange on your screen. And then the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, which is just north of this regional toll project on I-5. And we want to make super clear that drivers would not pay an additional toll for these sections that are already tolled by the other two projects. And then, as mentioned earlier, we're looking at tolling all lanes and all segments of I-5 and I-205 in this area. Okay, so as part of the proposed action, we're looking at tolls based on a set schedule that includes location and time of days. So the toll rate schedule would vary based on time of day and location, and this is known as variable rate tolls. So drivers would be charged a higher toll rate at congested locations and during morning and afternoon rush hours, and then lower rates at other times of day and non-congested locations. And then we have toll rates, on to the next slide. So we're also looking at a fully electronic system. As you heard in the video, drivers would not stop to pay a toll. They pay through an entirely electronic system. They would drive under, so drivers would drive under a structure with equipment to read a toll tag, which is a sticker that attaches to the car's windshield. But if no toll tag is detected, a temporary photo is taken of the license plate, and then that registered driver would receive a bill in the mail. And then, as part of our proposed action, we're also including the fact that toll rates would be monitored and adjusted after tolling begins. So initial toll rates will be adopted by the Oregon Transportation Commission, the commission that directs ODOT. And these rates would be informed by traffic modeling and among public input and a number of other inputs. But then after tolling begins, the toll rates would be monitored and adjusted to meet real traffic conditions. So a traffic model is no longer needed after tolling begins and we're able to see what actually happens live. All right, so most important part is the current status and how to comment on the project. So since spring of 2021, ODOT has studied project options and we've developed a draft purpose and need statement, identified ways to assist drivers with low incomes, as Garrett mentioned, and invited public comment. And now we are beginning an environmental analysis phase to identify the potential benefits and environmental impacts of the project. And this beginning of the analysis is called scoping. And during the scoping period, we're looking for input from the public and stakeholders and participating agencies. And the purpose of the scoping phase is to invite input on the range or the scope of community and environmental issues to study. And then once the scoping period is complete, the results will be the results of the comments will be considered and will help influence the project moving forward. Then we will head into an environmental analysis. And what happens in the environmental analysis is that a problem is identified. In this case, our primary problem is congestion. And then we produce an environmental document and invite comments on that draft document, and then produce a revised document based on those comments. So I have on the screen here a timeline just to help explain the process for the environmental review phase. So as mentioned, we start with the scoping phase, and then we move into the actual analysis. And then after the analysis is complete, ODOT will publish a draft environmental assessment, which is the environmental document that will be produced for this project. And then we'll invite public comments on that draft environmental assessment. And then a revised environmental assessment will be released, as well as a NEPA decision from the Federal Highway Administration. So they will use the environmental document to make a decision on whether or not the project would or would not cause significant environmental impacts. And then after this, ODOT and the Oregon Transportation Commission will move into setting toll rates. And the toll rate will be developed with the primary purpose of reducing congestion while keeping it as low as possible to reduce impacts to the community. And ultimately, it will be the Oregon Transportation Commission that sets the rates, and that will occur about 6 months before tolling begins. So we still have a long ways to go and a lot of analysis to do before we reach the adoption of toll rates and implementation of tolling. All right, so for those of you here that represent participating agencies, the primary role for your agencies is to communicate your interests or concerns regarding the project's potential environmental impacts and to provide input on unresolved issues. So that's kind of the environmental term for participating agencies throughout the environmental phase. So we have a couple, I guess, 3 kind of most critical periods for participating agencies to pay attention to. The first is what we're currently in, the scoping period. So I'll ask agencies to review and provide comments on planning materials and then input on the upcoming environmental phase. And then into 2023, we'll ask participating agencies to review and provide comments on study methods. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have another big engagement milestone once the draft environmental assessment is released. So this screen is just kind of showing a quick overview of the main topic areas that the environmental document will cover. So it looks at much more than just transportation. We also look at air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, economic impacts, impacts to communities, environmental justice, and then all of those impacts combined. So what type of input is needed right now? We welcome comments on any topic, but what we're really looking for comments on to help us head into this environmental analysis is comments on the draft purpose and need statement. So I read the purpose earlier, but there's a number of other objectives that the project is trying to meet. So we would love your comments on that. We're also looking for comments on the proposed action, which I just provided an overview of. There's a longer technical document online that provides a bunch of details on that. And then thirdly, we're looking for comments on the scope of the community and environmental resources that will be evaluated. So is there anything missing from that list, or do you have any comments on that list? So
Are we
as you're
opening it up, Zoe, or is this
almost
okay.
done, one more slide.
Thank you.
So when you go to comment for the beginning of this phase, we have a couple of suggestions you might consider to make your comment most effective. So first, are the issues we plan to analyze important to you, your community, and the environment, or do you have other suggestions? Secondly, do you have suggestions to change the proposed congestion pricing concept? Or thirdly, do you have comments on why the project is needed or the goals we're trying to meet? And then here's a quick QR code and the various different ways that you can comment. If you want to take a picture of this screen, feel free. The slides were sent around. So I'll turn it back over to Garrett.
Yep, and in Jeopardy fashion, I have one potpourri slide to catch us up on other tolling matters, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Dalen. So we had the Regional Toll Advisory Committee and Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee. Those meetings just occurred here in early December. Many thanks for Commissioner Fye and Mayor Bubenik for their hours spent on that work, and for some of the new Amanda Garcia Snell with Washington County, who's on that EMAC, the Equity Committee. Next year, an important, the statewide toll rulemaking advisory committee that'll start up here early next year in a month or two, with their work on rulemaking around the customer service rules, and then the rate schedule, not the toll rate allocation, but the rate schedule for 205. On January 12th, the Oregon Transportation Commission will look at that Oregon Highway Plan toll amendment. So that sets a lot of those important policies that guide that rulemaking and future decision-making processes. The 205 toll project will have its draft environmental analysis, which I know y'all have probably been waiting on for a little bit to actually see what are those more detailed benefits and impacts, revenue estimates, toll rate schedule. That comes out in that draft environmental assessment early next year. And then just doubling back on anything we can do to help get out the word on the public comment period that Zoe just walked through around this regional mobility pricing project. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you, and would love to hear any questions, thoughts, comments, or areas where we can clarify.
Hands, who's got hands? Mayor Beatty.
Quick question. There was a slide about potentially sorry, my brain's not functioning. Community members being able to access a discount or reduced tolling fee. I'm assuming that's something we would have to work out in a later work session, but are government-owned vehicles going to be have to pay it, like police cars, fire trucks, ODOT vehicles, City of Beaverton vehicles? Military owns a plethora of vehicles here. So how is that going to work? Are we charging ourselves or only community members?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Mayor Beatty, that Oregon Highway Plan, the toll policy amendment that's going to the OTC in January, it does list out the exemptions for like emergency response vehicles, but that's as far as it goes at the current moment. So if you wanted to go further to include, like you're saying, government or military, other vehicles, that would be where you would want that added language, and the OTC would, make that call.
Where do we provide that input, to you or to somebody else?
You can provide it to me, but I'll also I'll send back around the link so everybody knows that you would want to communicate that to the Oregon Transportation Commission. They'll be the deciders on that piece.
Mayor Truax.
Yeah, I wrote, question, what role would our local officials play in the tolling charges? Where is there going to be a specific opportunity for local government officials to sit around a table and say X number of dollars or whatever the fees are during peak times and during off-peak times, so that again, we can have, do we get an opportunity? Do you guys get an opportunity? I do for another 5 hours, but do you get the opportunity to participate in the tolling schedule and the tolling rates?
Yes, you do. So this is part of it. The way that these rates are developed, the first set and decisions and analysis that goes through are what Zoe walked through with the project analysis, that environmental analysis. So as mayors, as participating agencies, you're there for each of the key public comment periods. Would love to hear your feedback, and really that's what we're looking to get. And then I would say more long-term with how the policies are set up and the rate setting process and how you interact with the Oregon Transportation Commission. That's what we're hoping this Regional Toll Advisory Committee and the work of what they're doing is able to provide that policymaker direction from local cities and the county to ODOT and to the ODOT director for to inform those Oregon Transportation Commission decisions.
And if I could ask one more question along those lines, Mayor Fitzgerald, I apologize. There are some cities that are not central to the issue of tolling, Forest Grove perhaps being one of them. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be using that system and paying tolls on it. It also, there are other cities throughout the state of Oregon. Using an extreme example, Lakeview comes to mind, where there might be shipments going through the metropolitan Portland area from companies down there. And they, do those entities around the state have any input into the tolling in the metropolitan Portland area?
Quickly, yes. And it's through a similar structure. It may not be as like on that regional committee or through a participating agency. But even during this little public comment period, the public comment period we're going on now, we've advertised that statewide, and we really don't turn down presentations. So whether it's Forest Grove or Ashland or Coos Bay, we would, we'd drop into, show up to a meeting, connect with those folks to make sure their input's being provided along the way. Yeah, thanks, Mayor Truex.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Appreciate this chance to talk about this big project and topic again. With regard to input from entities, maybe it's a trucking organization, representatives of that industry, or a city that makes a recommendation for something. For example, as we talked about in Wilsonville, we have the potential for a toll starting right in the middle of our city. And so we are hearing a lot from citizens who want to have that addressed in a form of an exemption or some such thing. When would those decisions be known? What, a decision on those appeals be known? And secondly, if some of these concerns are not identified early on, because maybe some of the entities in our state that have a role or are affected by this weren't really aware of it, are there changes that can be made later on? So for the current requests, when will they hear about it? And what about something someone discovers as a problem later on?
Yeah, they're really good questions, Mayor Fitzgerald. So I would call attention to two because you're talking about Charbonneau and the Boone Bridge and where the tolling gantries would be placed. So there will be, through this environmental analysis project, we will study boundaries of where tolling would be placed. So I think providing comments right now around where you would like to see those toll boundaries would inform ODOT and Federal Highway Administration in setting up the project for study. I'd also say that the exemptions, the discount, kind of back to what Mayor Beatty said, that Oregon Transportation Commission meeting on January 12th, I would call you in those policies. There is language around for ODOT to consider an exemption based on kind of geographic barriers or frequent use. And so I would say kind of being a proponent of that policy or providing input on how that can be improved would be a good place. And then finally, a lot of this, we're doing our best to kind of work through to identify the impacts and mitigation and what's needed. But we really need to see it in place to figure out how mobility is going to be shifted. And so as these projects develop, we'll also be developing a monitoring program and identifying what are the locations we're going to study, what information are we going to gather, what would that lead to. So again, there's some of that language in the policy amendment that's coming to the OTC in January, but more of that gets developed as the projects get developed down the line. So I would say that Regional Toll Advisory Committee meeting, again, that Mayor Bubenik and Commissioner Fire on, that's one of their key questions is what's the long-term, short and long-term plan for that monitoring and partnership.
Metro Councilor Garrett.
I would refer to Mayor Sharado first.
You'll give a pass of the line, Mayor Sharado.
Thank you, Garrett. And Garrett got him back to back here. This issue, this question that I have may have been well addressed sometime in the past, and I have apologized for not being more up to speed on it. But it's occurred to me from time to time when thinking about the tolling and being prepared at some point in time where we will have to answer God knows what questions from the public as this comes closer and closer to any potential reality. But what is the possibility and or probability that the tolling system can be used as a law enforcement tool?
What do you mean by that? Spell that out a little bit.
Okay, Amber Alert. We've got XYZ car that everybody is looking for, and it passes through a tolling booth. We have somebody that's involved in a high-speed chase. We have somebody who's, doing something that would be outside of the parameters of the law. Does tolling in any way, shape, or form affect the ability of law enforcement to use that tolling information in order to enforce the law?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Mayor Sharado, that's an interesting idea. I don't know if we've gotten that before, but I would say that in that rulemaking process that's about to occur this next year, that is where the state will say and ODOT will say what happens with people's information when it's collected, and how long will the state keep it or not keep it. But the idea of how that would interoperate with emergency response and how it could be used as a benefit is a pretty cool idea, if it could be put in practice. So I'll send that up to my operations folks. I don't know if they've been thinking about it like that.
All right, well, thank you. And I guess that makes me feel better that it hasn't been raised before, but I guess it also tells you where my mind wanders to from time to time. So thanks for your answer.
Thanks, Mayor Sharado.
Hey.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Am I-
Yep, Garrett, you're up.
Yeah, well, first of all, I comment on Mayor Sharado's idea. I think that's something we could ask WashDOT, because whether their license plate thing is automatically transferable. I notice when I'm up in Washington, there's lots of postings saying, look for this license plate. It's automatically posted on some of their gantry locations. And it's not something we do in Oregon yet, but maybe we will. I also want to support particularly what Mayor Truax indicated in as strong as possible, a formal as possible, a local role, and I have to say that might include Metro on sort of evaluating the rate setting and the rate setting for the tolling process. Simply, obviously, Metro had the regional rate study that said it's sort of like squeezing water. You squeeze it in one place, it's going to show up someplace else. So whatever happens in one location is going to have somewhat regional impacts. And so, and supposedly we have some responsibility in that regard. But I have two serious questions and one sort of snarky question. The first question has to do with, has there been any consideration or under what guise to regional equity such that, for example, people in Beaverton heading south pay similar tolls to people in, say, Carver heading south to Salem or heading north, so that there isn't a regional disparity there? And then a question about the bridge. One of the tolling locations indicated is at the Tualatin River Bridge. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be told to pay for the bridge or whatever, but if it's being told or proposed to pay for the bridge, are there criteria on bridge sizes? Because I know of bridges larger than the Tualatin River Bridge that aren't tolled, such as the I-5 in Eugene and the I-5 and the I-5 over the Rogue in Roseburg area. So I'm just wondering if there is a bridge standard for when you toll for bridge payment and when you don't. And then my sort of snarky question is, so which are we going to go to? Are we going to start referring to these as turnpikes or toll roads, since they won't be freeways anymore?
Well, I'll start with the snarky one. I'm not sure yet. There, maybe we'll see which one you would vote for. Maybe we'll just go with that, Garrett. Garrett's rule the world. But I would say then back up to your top question around Metro Council engagement. We very much see Metro Council being a key partner in this. President Peterson is on that Regional Toll Advisory Committee. And also through Metro Council's role in JPAC and then the Council itself and regional transportation decisions. This regional mobility pricing project and then the funding that comes with that comes through your council for votes. So y'all have a key piece in that part of it.
I was just supporting the comments.
Yeah. And then the question around regional patterns and how that travel works, specifically from an equity standpoint, from historically marginalized or disadvantaged communities, maybe not just income, but also race or other commuting patterns, is a key part of our study that Zoe walked through. And so if there are specific commuting patterns that you're worried about or concerned, that type of information is excellent to have right now, because this is the start of our study. And so we can set that up to work on studying that as that goes for impacts. And then the bridge sizing piece, I'll have to circle back. I'll have to get with some of our construction folks to talk about if bridges are sized differently when they're tolled or non-tolled. I think that was the question you had raised. So, yeah.
That all the question? Oh, Chris has got one.
I'm gonna jump in. I don't usually do this, but we asked in particular, one of the reasons we wanted to have this update from ODOT now is because of the public comment period on the scoping process. And I think that the discussion here shows that it's very difficult to focus on just one part because there's so many different parts in the tolling program. So I'm going to propose something and Garrett can tell me if I'm wrong or not. But Garrett, I think rather than being too prescriptive about what is or isn't a scoping comment, I think my sense is that ODOT would be open to the variety of comments that people have. And if some of them are or aren't relevant to the scoping questions at hand, you can respond differently. But I think it is pretty hard to figure out what exactly to comment on the scoping, given it's sort of embryonic or early stage right now. So I just wondered if you could, it is important for OTC to hear from people, particularly people who aren't living or working directly next to I-5 or I-205, because I know OTC is going to hear a lot from those people. But to hear some of these broader comments and concerns about what could or should be studied. So I just want to make that pitch to encourage people to comment without trying to feel too boxed in or needing the comments to be too narrow. But I will turn to Garrett to see if that's true or not.
No, I'll verify that. I think that's true. And I think also what would be helpful for that would be, and I'm looking at Mayor Bubenek and Commissioner Fye, is that through those regional toll advisory committee meetings, we're really talking about that whole range of issues, not just specifically the scoping. So I think that would be really helpful for them as well to pass on in that forum and really frame up that discussion. So I think that could be good, but specifically it'd be good, anything like Zoe said, those documents she pulled up, if you do have specific comments to a purpose and need statement or goals and objectives, those are great. And then coming in January, because I know Mayor Fitzgerald and others asked about that policy amendment, it'd be good to get specific feedback on that as well. So a yes, and I would say.
Other questions or comments? Garrett?
Yeah, one quick, just under which of the categories that you listed, is it on community, environment, or air quality, does diversion, the diversion impacts come, or under multiple?
Multiple.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nobody else, I've got like half a page, so I'm going to start diving in, Garrett. Like all NEPA projects, I'm assuming you will include a no build option.
Yep.
Cool. So that got that one answered. What is our baseline year for comparison? So the reason I bring that up is baseline year for 2019 is very different than base year 2020 too in the spring is right now. And I speak to travel patterns right now. We still haven't fully overloaded Barnes, Germantown, and all of those. We haven't seen them max out yet, but that's, you know, something I have intimate experience with. But basically, I understand that 26 is already back to where it was before, and it kind of looks like I-5 is right back to where it was. So what's our baseline year for comparison so we can understand what we're doing about safety, environmental, you know, what's the real, you know, what kind of carbon load are we doing, those kind of impacts.
Yeah. Zoe, have we set that yet? Or do you know the answer off the top of your head?
Yeah, so for our modeling work, for our transportation modeling, we'll actually do 2 years, 2027 and 2045. We'll start with 2045. That's where most of the work gets done. So we're really looking at building a congestion pricing system way into the future, you know, trying to make sure this is going to prepare the region for the growth that we'll see and the land use changes that we'll see by 2045. So that's our main comparison year between, as you mentioned, a proposed action versus no action. So the no action includes all the RTP projects, the regional transportation plan projects.
And we can, let's circle back on that as well, Mayor Dalen, because that kind of detail piece that comes in this next process of those methodology reports. Because I think we do have, even prior to 2027, there's a baseline we set that's in the regional travel demand model. So let's circle back on that. We can get you that answer.
Yeah, sorry, quickly, the baseline is 2015.
Okay.
So we use what's in the Metro model already, which is 2015, 2027, and 2045.
Wow. Because there was a massive shift between 2015 and 2019 or even 2021. So, okay, that's good to know that we're that far off or lagging on our baseline. So how do you guys plan to measure or project the safety impact? Travel on the highway is 7 times safer than it is traveling off the highway. So how do you guys plan to project that diversion impact for safety?
Sure, we'll study safety on the highway and the surrounding roads that are kind of within that what gets called the transportation area potential impact. That's kind of a footprint for that more detailed transportation analysis that comes with this environmental assessment. So the specific methodology on what we're studying for safety, that happens in the, I'll punt it slightly, but that happens in that methodology report that comes next. So in NEPA, you set up your goals and objectives. That's what's happening now. And then you set up the more specifics of how you study those goals or objectives in this next round. But if there are specific ways that you want us to study safety, those are great to hear right now as well.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're speaking about goals, I think our expectation is safety has to be equivalent or better. I don't know what the measure of better, how far better, but it's got to be better than what it is now. Or why would you do this? Why would you more further endanger our public by driving more traffic off the highway into, you know, right now Google sends me through Jason's neighborhood because the I-5 doesn't work now. Right. So thank you, Google and Waze both.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other one, and I'm trying to figure out how we ask the question, and I suppose the only way I can ask it is, where does the traffic go?
Sure. Zoe, do you want to talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in our analysis?
Yeah, so I think kind of first getting back to your first question, when we're looking at safety, like you said, so we're really focused on 2027 and 2045. And so when we conduct the analysis, we look at a future scenario, so 2045, and we analyze diversion that would occur just because of congestion, like you said, on I-5 and I-205. So people are going to move onto local roads or a parallel arterial just to avoid congestion. And then we'll look at that scenario without tolling, and then we'll look at this exact same scenario. Everything is held constant except the addition of congestion pricing. And we'll actually see some areas where we haven't done the analysis yet, so I can't say exactly what we'll see, but we might even see some areas have a reduction in rerouting because more cars are able to move through I-5 and I-205. So we'll look really closely in that project area and that area of potential impact that Garrett mentioned. We'll look closely where we're seeing where there might be some potential safety concerns, and then other areas where we're actually seeing some relief in rerouting and where safety might be better off. So we'll look at that in detail during the environmental analysis.
Cool. I do like that you acknowledge in the presentation, this is an opportunity to extract more money from commuters. So that's good. Will the NEPA process yield the leakage rate? And when I say leakage, I mean, we're going to spend millions, dare I say billions, on infrastructure to put in the gantries, sustain the servers. Frank loves this answer. More servers, more software, the personnel increases to read the license plates, the personnel to answer the mail, because the only people that are going to have transponders are people that live in the metropolitan area that regularly transgress through this area. So is the project going to give us that leakage rate in the proposed expansion or continued growth and expense by putting in a toll system? How much just the base cost of it to sustain it, software upgrades, upgrading the gantries? When California changes their toll pendants or Washington does, then we got to upgrade our system to the new software. On and on and on it goes, right? I see millions of dollars in leakage every year. So will that come out of the NEPA?
It won't come specifically out of the NEPA. So where it will come though, and I have to check on the timing of this, is that there are 3 kind of levels of traffic and revenue analysis. And it's through those is where you start to figure out your administration cost, your overhead, like you were just saying there, Mayor Dalen. So we can report back, we can go look in the schedule and see when the timing of that would be, but we do expect that to for the 205 toll project to come out next year. And then I think for the regional mobility pricing project, I think it might be late next year, toward the end of next year, that information. But that'll be a key piece to figure out, like how much is, like you're saying, either referred to as leakage or kind of coming off the top for administration, which is the first requirement that in federal law for tolling revenue, where it needs to fulfill first.
Yeah, just will quickly add, we are looking at the level 2 traffic and revenue study for the regional project to come out probably in quarter 4 towards the end of next year, like Garrett said, and that will provide some probably a qualitative level of analysis on costs, which include those administrative costs and cost to build gantries, and then it will include some assumptions on leakage. For example, when you take a picture of a license plate, that can result in some minor leakage because sometimes the camera can't quite capture it, or sometimes you can't track that person down, and we're not gonna, ODOT's not gonna spend a ton of money and time to track everything down. So that level 2 analysis will include some assumptions on leakage, and we'll get to some high level information on project costs.
Cool. Well, I see others with questions, so I'll pause on my laundry list. Mayor Bubinek?
Just to your question about the traffic study, I downloaded it already, but Garrett was kind enough. I had that same question about the corridor analysis on how they're going to figure out diversion and all that good stuff. And Garrett was nice enough to shoot me a link to that PDF that you sent me, Garrett, with the I-5 and 205 corridor analysis. So if you could shoot that to Chris, and then Chris can distribute it to folks. It's 100-something pages, but it's worth reading on that analysis from 2015. But they also use cell phone data from 2019 to check out the traffic patterns. Because one of the questions folks had was, like, I-5 has a lot of short trips. So how's that going to work on the tolling gantries, and how are you going to calculate tolls if I'm only going 2 or 3 exits versus, maybe possibly a longer trip on 205. So they're relying on this document for that analysis.
Tara?
Got it. Thank you. I just wanted to build off one of Mayor Dillion's questions about where the assumptions about where the vehicles will go if off highway. And so to frame it a bit differently, what assumptions are being made about mode shift as part of these different scenarios, like whether that is to transit or trips not taken, if people, what types of travel behavior changes are being assumed at kind of the short, medium, and long term. And I guess that goes for like, what might people change behavior to carpooling or transit, and how does that play in? And that's kind of a preview of our comments for the RMPP scoping that we're trying to pull together as well.
Yeah, excellent question. So in the RMPP scoping and some of the goals and objectives, you can see we lay up, we talk about that in enhancing that mode shift, using the pricing system to try to support the transit system. If you feel like those goals or objectives should go further or be clearer, that's great input to have now. Throughout the analysis, then there will be kind of assumptions made for mode shift or made for that transition over. Now we know even with that, it doesn't get us to the future we really want to be. And so that's why ODOT and TriMet and others were working on what's called a public transit strategy that can help complement this congestion pricing work to really figure out, not just through this NEPA study, kind of outside of that, what are those investments and partnerships that are needed to really to achieve those goals that we want to see around mode shift, around transit ridership, around greenhouse gas reductions and safety.
And Tara, I think you're getting at some really complicated questions in terms of the assumptions made about behavioral change. What I think you're kind of getting at, like, what do we assume in terms of the cost of a toll versus taking transit, and how do we know what shifts people would actually make? And it's all extremely complicated. I don't have the answers. I'm sure the team would love to talk through that with you. We have some great modelers working on this project that have so much incredible knowledge about how the modeling works. But I just want to add that it's a good reminder that that's, because we're using all of these assumptions in the analysis, that's why tolls will have to be monitored and adjusted. And, ODOT will work with TriMet and other transit agencies long-term to figure out the right balance, because we can only do so much to predict what tolling will look like when it actually comes onto the system.
Got it. Thank you. I don't want to be another, what about this question, but how we align those expectations with the actuals for transit service growth or carpool growth and consistently refining is something we're interested in.
Very much so. Agree.
Mayor Trax?
Thank you. And thank you for the input on this. And the report, I guess, my question would be, what's the ripple effect of all of this? Have they done any kind of studies that if we do the tolling along I-5 and I-205, what's the ripple onto 217, onto 26, and then the lesser ripples onto such places like Germantown and so on and so forth? Has the impact area been widened to include those kinds of I hesitate to say this, but for these peripheral roads, and using the ones in Washington County as an example, and I'm sure there are many more in Clackamas County that would also be impacted.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question.
Not enough damage.
Yeah. I would say partly the last year and a half of kind of the study that's been happening in our planning phase has been looking at some of that question. What are some of those regional shift pieces? And I think we included the 3 counties, but also looked at kind of what would happen to Marion County and Clark County up there in Washington as well. And so there we can send that information on kind of what we're seeing or not seeing as some of that regional shift. And then we'll get another crack at that analysis coming in the environmental assessment. There's different kind of, they call them area potential impacts, different footprints and how we study that transportation and movement, and all that's kind of what'll get figured out here, or what'll get assumed for the analysis within the next few months. And so if you want to have, again, like certain areas or certain commuting patterns that you really want us to focus on, that's the type of input would be great to hear about now.
Pete, I feel like you're playing my straight man on that, because I was going to ask you about travel shed. I mean, I know when we use some things for our One Act, we look at the 7 county. Is that how far you guys are going out, or what is the prescribed shed you're looking at right now?
You know, for the planning and environmental linkages, Zoe, the shed, or
I'm sorry, I don't think I caught the question.
Mayor Dalen was asking how big is the travel shed that we've looked at to date on the project.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand the question.
So I'll give you an example, maybe that'll
Yeah.
help. So I
Okay.
know from the Intel reports that their employment shed reaches Ridgefield, Washington, Washougal, Canby, Yam Hill. So that's where the employees come from to work at Intel. A significant number come from inside the metro region, but a significant number come outside across one or more of our adjacent rivers around us.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so because we use the regional model as our primary tool, the regional travel demand model, we are able to look at the entire region and see any changes with tolling across the whole region. But there's still a lot of work to be done over the next couple months, like Garrett mentioned, on defining the specific areas for each environmental topic. And so we'll define the areas specifically for each environmental topic. And within those areas, we'll analyze the different impacts. So for example, you might see a very large area for the environmental justice topic. You might see, a pretty big area to look at the impacts across that entire area. And then you might see a smaller area for example, one of the topics is air quality. So you might see a smaller area for that. So we still have more work to do to define our geographic areas for the environmental analysis. Does that answer the question?
You actually made me more worried instead of less worried, because if you're using the regional travel model, we are constantly pointing out the inequities and the problems with that. And I didn't know if I was going to get an opportunity to use the word mesoscopic modeling, but look, Don's not even gone, and I got to throw it in there because I look at as an existing user, right? I actually go Highway 47 to get to my in-laws in Independence, that rather than go through I-5 and throw away half an hour to 45 minutes of my life in Wilsonville. Like the people of Wilsonville don't like the traffic you have. So, and basically, if I won't join I-5 before I get to Woodburn, right? There's just no reason for me to throw away that time when I can get to Woodburn in an hour, unless I go through the I-5, which means it's an hour and a half to Woodburn anytime the traffic's moving around. Yeah. So that's why I was asking the travel shed, because I think we'll see more people push out instead of in when you're going to that. So what we'll end up having more circulation around. I know we're running short on time, but I'm not sure how your analysis is going to comprehend. And you talked about some of it, the no smartphone, no internet, no credit card folks. So I have hundreds of people every month have to decide between paying the water bill, the gas bill, the electric bill, or medicine because of their economic challenges. So we have that ongoing water bill problem in our community. And now we're going to add a cost. I want to make sure how we're going to understand that. and how we're going to enable those folks, because that's a problem that's all over our state, especially outside the metropolitan and inside the metropolitan area, and how you will encourage people when they mail in their toll, because you're going to send them a toll bill because they don't have a transponder and they don't come to Metro every day, how they can apply for that exemption, because they probably qualify for it, but they don't know how to do it when you just send them a bill in an envelope.
Yeah, spot on. And I think that's the work of that development of that low income toll program. And in that report that was received by the legislature just the other day, a key piece of that, and then the recommendations of our equity committee, is to not just have government service, like ODOT centers, but really go to communities, work with community organizations to do the enrollment in person there, to make that as seamless process as possible. So if there are specific community organizations that you want us to connect with, we already are through some of this process, but if there are more specifically in Cornelius or other areas throughout the county, please put us in contact or send me an email, and we'll reach out to them to start to develop those relationships if we don't have them already, to make sure that's in place before tolling starts.
And I think you're missing my point. So when the couple comes in from Lapine for cancer treatment, OHSU, and they don't normally come here except they're once a month for cancer treatment, and they definitely qualify for it, they're not going to have a transponder. You're going to need to be able to exempt them. How do they qualify for that exemption? Because these are the folks that can't afford it. They're already having enough trouble in their life. The toll isn't helping them.
Sure.
It's only making it a burden for them to get to the medical treatment they need so desperately. So how do you, when you reach out to them, enable them to file that exemption when all you're sending them is an envelope and a bill? Because that's what I've seen in other places, is all you get is a bill and an envelope that says pay this amount. It doesn't talk to you about how you apply for an exemption or how you'd automatically qualify. So I think we need to be considering those problems too.
Oh, agree. Definitely.
Okay. Any last comments? Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next topic. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks you for
Thank you.
listening to our questions. Transportation Policy Alternatives Committee City Representative Candidate. Go to page 3. Okay, so this is our TPAC biographical summaries. So I wanted to give, is Don able to be promoted? He just wanted to say a quick thank you to folks before we start talking with the new candidates. Stephen, is Don? I'm sure Don's there. I'm getting messages from him. Okay, well, while you figure that out, basically what we're going to look at is our TPAC primary representative for cities of Washington County. We have 3 nominations for mayors in Washington County that would like to serve as that position. The 3 are here to give a short biographical summary of their work and interest in serving. I'll introduce, I'm going to mess up somebody's name. Jean Seneschal Big from the city of Beaverton. Dave Roth's got an easy name from the city of Tigard. And Mike McCarthy from the city of Tualatin, who's currently serving as our alternate. And their bio summaries were in the packet. I think we're going to give each of them 2 minutes to sing and dance.
Great. And Chair, I wanted to just note that Don Odermatt is on the call. I think he was in transition when I was looking for his name just a minute ago. So maybe we'll come back to Don at the end.
Great. That sounds good.
Excellent. Thanks.
So is Jean queued up? There's Jean.
Hi, I'm here. And Mayor Delane, you did an excellent job on Seneschal. Kudos.
Thank you.
You got it. Well, hello, everyone. I know some of you, most of you, I haven't maybe met all of you, and it's been a long time since we've been in person. So it's been a pleasure to follow you all along these past 3.5 years now that I've been at Beaverton as the transportation planning manager. And I will say what I think I said maybe the last time I was in this same spot, which is before I arrived at Beaverton, I'd heard great things about the strength of Washington County and its place at the regional table. and the coordination and teamwork that was visible to others in the region, sort of that working together as a team and showing up was a really notable presence for others who were seeing how the county had done its work over many years. Just a little bit in terms of my career, I have been in transportation my entire career. It's a little over 25 years now. And I have touched transportation really in lots of different ways, from sort of planning and policy, developing some citywide plans and policies long ago in my past, and now currently at City of Beaverton. I spent much of my career delivering capital projects when I was at the City of Portland. Those were, small to large and even regional, collaborating with TriMet in building the Orange Line. And I saw those projects through planning and design and construction. So I speak that skill set really well. And then even just applying for and administering grants and funding, that's a key part of what you do as a project manager or as a division manager in my role at City of Beaverton, and even the conversations that we have at this regional table. Those dollars that funnel through the region are so precious, and the decisions that get made around the TPAC table and then up to JPAC and onto the Metro Council are also key. And WCCC has that place where WCCC comes into the process through the board, the county board representatives, but also through the city representatives. So I feel sort of my career has been pretty broad in the experience that I have and what I would bring to this role. I think this next year ahead, there's just big policy work at the regional table. We were just hearing about the tolling work, and we're going to see Garrett and others more throughout the next year. The RTP has that adoption deadline in December, and then other sort of the mega projects, the Interstate Bridge and Rose Quarter. But even here on the west side, we have TV Highway and the West Side Multimodal Study. So there's just a lot of activity going on and feeding into those regional decisions. The role that we as the cities of Washington County get to play at TPAC and at JPAC are going to be really critical in the next year. And in my statement, I spoke to sort of the work on screen, meaning these meetings. We spend a lot of time on screen now, as well as the behind the scenes work. And I think that's a really fundamental piece of the TPAC role. Some of it's just sort of showing up and participating in the conversations and navigating those discussions in the TPAC meetings, or when we meet as the WCCC TAC and we're preparing our TPAC reps for those. But it's also that behind the scenes work with my peers, the staff that I get to collaborate with from all the jurisdictions, as well as our JPAC reps. And that's really taking the time sort of behind the scenes, collaborating, reaching out, and seeking out where we have consensus. So to me, that's sort of the key part of the TPAC role is both what's on screen and then the work behind the scenes. It'd be a joy to get to do it. I've really appreciated the time that I've spent in these rooms, just really getting my arms around Washington County needs and desires. There's a lot of differing voices. I think we're really aware of that, and I think that's a key part of the TPAC role and what that representative needs to be approaching it with an open mind and being collaborative. So thank you all for considering me for this. I really appreciate it.
Jean, I think Dave's up next. Dave, I'm going to go and give you a little more time. I think we ended up with about 4 minutes for Jean there.
Sorry.
So I'm going to give you a little more time.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Delenn. Good afternoon, mayors, commissioners, and staff. My name is Dave Roth. I'm Tigard's Senior Transportation Planner, and I'm interested in being the next TPAC rep for Washington County cities. I've been with the City of Tigard for about 4.5 years and have been the city's WCCC TAC rep since January of 2019. I included some biographical information in my submission for the packet, so you may have seen that if you read through it. Also include my resume. But just to recap, I have a master's degree in community and regional planning from U of O. I was born in Eugene, grew up there, also went to school for a little bit in Corvallis for a couple of years, but went back to U of O for grad school. While I was still in grad school, I started working for the city of Eugene and worked as a transportation planner there for about 5.5 years. We were housed within public works engineering, so I have a really close relationship historically in my career working with engineers. It's been very valuable for doing this kind of work, obviously. While I was at Eugene, I managed an update to the Ped Bike Master Plan. I managed the transportation options team, including the city's Ped Bike coordinator, some communications folks, some interns, and created and managed the city's first Ped Bike advisory committee. After working for Eugene, I went up to Vancouver, BC and worked for TransLink. While I was up there, I worked within their strategy team and later transitioned to their infrastructure development team. I like to think about the work up there as a little bit of a preview or a glimpse into the future of what we might be seeing in the Portland metro region with some of the big project and programs on the horizon here, including road pricing, how we can move people around with a really effective and high quality transit system, for example. After TransLink, I took a little break from planning and I went and worked for Nike. I worked as a product engineer lead while I was at Nike and had a great experience there. Working in a corporate setting, developed a much better understanding of some of the needs of those types of businesses. Also got to travel a lot with that job. Every quarter I was going to Asia, which was an awesome experience. But I think much like Don Odermatt here, or at least what I anticipate Don doing in retirement, I missed transportation. So I wanted to go back and started looking for a new transportation planning job, and the senior planner position was open at Tigard. So I applied for it and took that job back in the middle of 2018. So that's just a quick summary of where I've been. Since I've been at the city of Tigard, I've worked to get the first Tigard Complete Streets policy adopted, and then spent 2 years updating the city's transportation system plan, which we just went through the legislative adoption process back in January of this year. So back to what I would bring to TPAC as the rep for Washington County Cities. I'd bring a diverse professional background and a depth of experience in transportation and urban planning. And I'm committed to inclusionary and transparent decision-making processes. In this role, in my role at the WCCC TAC rep for Tigard, I provide a coordination function for city and agency partner staff. I also support Tigard's mayor and leadership team in local and regional transportation conversations and strategic decision-making. I'd be honored to represent the cities of Washington County and Tigard on issues of local and regional significance at the TPAC table as the TPAC rep for Washington County Cities. I want to recognize the challenge of representing such a diverse group of cities and perspectives at the regional table. Our cities have many shared interests that we can rally around. There are also issues where our interests may diverge. As the TPAC rep, I'd seek to leverage those areas where we have strategic alignment, and on those we differ on, I'd seek to understand and work to represent different points of view at the TPAC table. With that, I'll just say thank you for your consideration. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. That takes us over to Mike.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for your time and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mike McCarthy and I work for the city of Tualatin as the city engineer. And I've been working in Washington County cities for about the last 15 years, Tigard before Tualatin. Before that, I worked for Marion County and a consultant and a contractor, often in a transportation planner / traffic engineer kind of role. So I've written a number of other transportation system plans and had to manage a lot of different transportation issues and a lot of safety analyses and really figuring out why and what we can do to minimize, the number of people getting hurt and killed on our roads. In terms of background, I grew up in the New York area, in an area I'd say fairly similar to Washington County, and then came to Oregon for my first job out of college. I went to Cornell in upstate New York and then moved out to Oregon. And my first day in Oregon, I was skiing on Mount Bachelor and then went to a job site out in Newport. And I just loved it. you could see a couple 100 miles all directions in the mountain. There's still some great skiing. Then got out to the coast and it was just beautiful. And I love just hiking and biking all over the whole area and exploring. And then I got into our area and I just loved it because it's a really good, well-functioning community with all that you'd want in a big urban area, but in the middle of just the outdoor wonderland. And that's, you know, what drew me here and what keeps me here. And what I want to really build and promote is really a great functioning community among all of us. And I believe that our transportation network works the best when all of the facilities are working well, where you've got good places to walk or bike, and also a good transit network that serves people well, gives people good options, and the arterials and the freeways are functioning well. And I believe it works best when it's all working well together and all the agencies are able to work well together and serve multiple needs. And found that really among our people, there is such a diversity of needs and diversity of jobs. And there's some people for whom riding transit to downtown Portland to work their job there and then ride home works out great. But others for whom, you know, they need to drive to 4 or 5 different job sites as a contractor or, you know, other types of jobs, and where they commute to work and have to get the kids to school and soccer and daycare and music lessons and stop at the grocery store and everything on the way home. And I'm committed to really listening to our people. And we've done quite a bit of that. And sometimes listening through interpreters to really get to know the needs of all of our community. And I look forward to working with each of you and each of your staff to understand more of all the needs all around the county and to really do the best that we can to work together to represent all of us at the regional level and really move our whole region forward as the wonderful, you know, Portland area that we can really be. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you for all that you're all doing to serve your communities and putting in so many long, hard hours and having so many difficult conversations. So thank you all for all of your service.
Okay, well, you've heard the spiel from everyone. Don, you want to say a sweet goodbye and try not to cry on us?
Yeah, you know, thank you to all of the mayors. It's been amazing, you know, 28-year career with Hillsborough. And I think the last, if I remember right, 8, 9 years serving the cities as first the alternate, then as the lead. It's not an easy job. I think your candidates here did a great job of, you know, expressing the fact that every jurisdiction's got its own contextual challenges. And this job at TPAC is one of trying to first understand, seek to understand, press, you know, if you need more clarity, and really do your best at the table, but also in the back rooms, as Gene was saying, in trying to move forward the agendas necessary to really best serve all of our communities. It's honestly been a real honor. I appreciate greatly the fact that you've entrusted me with that role. I think it's evident that we've got 3 great candidates here. And Washington County and its cities are going to be in very good position moving forward. I will just a quick note to the mayors of the elected lead and alternate. The value of the JPAC trip, it's truly invaluable. It's where your network really builds with not only your peer staff, but also with elected officials, not just within Washington County, but around the region. And strongly encourage that if your staff member is elected to one of these positions, that you really do your best to try to have them join that JPAC trip. It goes beyond the meetings with the agencies. It truly is about building the relationships that value your city as well as the other cities in this county. And I was going to close with a big thank you. Again, Washington County is an amazing county. It's got amazing cities. And our work together is just what I think sets us apart. Thank you all.
Thanks, Don. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of you. At this point, we're going to assign this awesome opportunity to Mayor Callaway. He will be receiving the votes. I think I did have a couple people ask the question. Maybe staff can help us clarify on that. I've heard it both ways. For the TPAC rep, do or do not, because it feeds into the JPAC and Metro system, do the cities outside Metro get to vote on this representation?
If I may, Mayor Delane, this came up in one of my earlier elections. It is only a vote of the mayors that are within the metro boundary.
And that's what I saw Steve and Chris and the others shaking on. So this will be, it's not that we don't care for your opinions, Mayor Jones or Lenahan, but that's the rules. Mayor Beatty?
Can you clarify too, and maybe this is for Mayor Callaway, is the ballot coming to us like select primary and alternate, or do you want us to annotate it in the email?
So with any luck, can you hear me okay? Good, all right. So the vote will come out and I'll just send it to, you know, the mayors of Beaverton, Cornelius, Durham, First Grove, Hillsborough, King City, Sherwood, Tiger, Tualatin, Wilsonville. But then when you reply, just reply to me and Stephen Roberts, okay? We will collect and then we will let you know what the total was. If, because there's 10 mayors, so if it's 4-4, tie for first and 2 for this for the third person, then we'll drop the third person. And we'll do a second round with just 2 people. So there's no ranked choice voting because I don't think our bylaws are set up for that. And then Lacey, specifically, Mayor Beatty, specifically to your question, if second place, you know, the TPAC alternate is not the consolation prize for second place. So I think Mike is currently the alternate filling in for Don. If one of the other 2 candidates is first, then that person takes Don's spot and Mike would he would go back to the alternate for the duration of that term. Okay. If Mike is elected as the is the permanent TPAC rep, then next month, and Chris, I'll lean into you on this, but then next month we would have an election for the TPAC alternate. Okay.
Clear enough. Any other questions?
And Mayor Beatty, did that answer your question or over answer it?
In great detail. Thank you, Mayor Callaway.
Okay. There's no other questions. We'll move on. Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation Representation nominees. So the purpose is to discuss timeline and process for the Region 1 Act representation nominees. The Region 1 Act bylaws call for Washington County Coordinating Committee to nominate community and business stakeholders. We have 2 mayors, Mayor Schneider and Mayor Truex, are serving currently, and as their R1 Act term expires June 23rd, but their term of office is going to expire in January. So since they'll no longer be mayors at that position, we need to figure out who we're going to recommend to fill out those terms. And then we'll come back around in June of 23 and figure out, do we keep them or do we replace them on that? So the 2023 members will then serve a 4-year term. So at this point, we have a call for nominations. If you are interested or want to nominate someone, excuse me, please let me know. I think I would be just as happy with Mayor Callaway as the mayor of the biggest city. We could annoy him further with more opportunities to collect votes and recommendations. So that's where we're at, recommendations, and then we can vote in January for those nominations. Mayor Bubinek.
I'll wait until Mayor Callaway decides what he wants to do.
I'd rather hear from Lacey first.
Well,
Lacey.
You know how this goes. Hillsborough is always scoffing their responsibilities onto the second largest city in Washington County. But my question was a little more structural. So I think we made these recommendations like my very first meeting as mayor, and I think we had a conversation around elected versus community representation. So could you just remind me where we're at right now? Are we voting, like, I know we're replacing 2 elected members, but were they in elected member spots, or we decided to have 2 elected members?
I'll pivot to Chris or Steven, but there's also requirement of a quorum of electeds within the R1 Act. So I think we were well within our lines for having those, because we currently have 1 industrial representative. I think it's from the Pride Trash Service. I see people nodding on that. So Stephen or Chris, can you clarify on that? I think.
Yeah, they're called community stakeholders, and there is a requirement for overall to be, I think it's half. And I am in the process of promoting Chris Ford, who manages the R1 Act, staffs it. So he promised he could show up today and just be here to answer a couple of questions. But yes, they are called community stakeholders. And there is one that has to be a city rep of the 5 or so for. And I do want to correct that it's the one thing I think I put in Mayor Delane's notes incorrectly is that it's while Mayor Snyder's position ends in 23, I believe Mayor Truax's goes to 25. So whoever gets that position has a little bit longer life with the R1 Act. So Chris, can you just briefly clarify this? It's going through a little bit of a rethink right now by the OTC.
Yeah, that's well put. And I apologize for jumping in and sharing this, and I'll try to be quick. So there's a few things. There's the existing act, which is the Area Commission on Transportation bylaws. And you're all correct and very up to date on the complexities of it. Yes, you need at least 1 city representative and 1 business representative. You've got that covered. So you've got some discretion here. And ultimately, if there's some detailed challenges, I can work with your county staff and coordinating committee staff on that. But I also want to share something important that's changing, which is House Bill 2985. This was passed by the 2021 Legislative Assembly. It directs ODOT to diversify its advisory committees to reflect Oregon population's racial, ethnic, and ability composition. And so the agency has determined that the acts do qualify as advisory committees in this capacity. So our bylaws have not been updated. This is going to be a moving space, but I wanted to come here and just mention it because this is an opportunity. And there'll be other opportunities and other coordinating committees at other times. But to consider this new law, and likely eventually all the acts will have evolved bylaws or other guidance over time. I just want to share some of ODOT's thinking on advisory committees. Overall, there's a thought to just look for a balance of perspectives and ensure a certain degree of elected officials. All advisory committees are supposed to make a commitment to ensure representation is diverse and reflective of the communities we serve. That's to ensure the viewpoints of those being impacted are included in discussions and decisions. For those who have been to an ACT meeting recently, the level of decisions have often been around money, not always transportation money, but things like Business Oregon or eventually like transit funding through the STIF program. And so it does have a voice in where funds go. And also one of the pieces of guidance from ODOT is to ensure that diversity is not simply about race, ethnicity, and culture, but also orientations, age, language, ability, socioeconomic status, geography, and other identities. And so I don't have any further guidance from you at this point, and that's just a lot to think about, but it's an opportunity, and I wanted to make sure that we're all in line with this House bill. Thanks.
Chris, and if I could just add that it sounds like this is kind of new, still being figured out, and this group will have the opportunity to nominate more people by June of 23 when a few more terms expire.
Yeah, June of 23, and you have, every coordinating committee in the region has its own approach. It's definitely a little bit separated. This isn't me or ODOT selecting members of a committee. And so in June of 23, Mayor Shirado's term and then Mayor Snyder's term and whoever gets slotted into that, those would come up and you can, make your determinations at that point. And it can be a ongoing process at a state level, but I'll always keep you up to date on the rules and guidance. But since the bill exists and is in force, and we just don't have the bylaws up today, I want to make sure you had a sense of our thinking and where things may be going. And my only other request is when you make your nominations, it would help to know into which time slot who is being nominated, given that they do expire at different points.
Okay, well, I think we need to hear on whether we're gonna take nominations from the floor, or do you want us to submit them to Mayor Callaway?
Steve?
I had the same question.
What do you think, Steve? You want us to send nominations to you and we'll
So,
see what comes up and then we'll
I think for
talk
this
about
one,
it?
you know, I'm happy to go either way. You know, it may be just for the sake of time. Why don't folks send me an email if you're interested? And let me know, I guess, if it's, you know, which position, based on the expiration date. Include Stephen in that, and then we'll turn that around and send it back out. And one question I had for Chris, Region 1 Act is beyond the metro boundaries. So Banks and Gaston would be included in this, but is North Plains in Region 1 Act, or are they in the
No.
other region?
So it's a little tricky. So Banks is an active member of the Northwest Act. So they're in Region 2 based on where they drew the maintenance boundary lines, but North Plains is in Region 1. So, yeah.
Can I ask one more clarifying?
Stephanie, you're on your own if you wish to be a part of.
I should say, we have one citizen at large vacancy we are on the process of seeking to fill for the Northwest Act as well. There you go.
Lacey, you had a question and a follow-up?
Yeah, Washington County, since their own, they decide who to send. That's not in the 4 that we have on this committee to decide.
Correct. There's a commissioner. Each of the 4 counties within Region 1 sends a commissioner. It's Roy Rogers at this point. And then, yeah, and I'll just mention in line with what I said before, and we really defer to the coordinating committees to have their own selection process. What happens is you send us a nomination, the ACT votes on it, but I don't need we're not looking for the ACT to make decisions. It would really be best to happen at a more localized level. But of course, I just want to clarify in case there's any misperceptions that the county stakeholders that you advance do not need to be members of the coordinating committee. They can be, they don't have to be.
Okay. My last framing, and I'll send them to Mayor Callaway. I don't approach doing that. When I look at the list of who we have, they're all 4 male mayors. And so my hope would be we would diversify a little bit by moving forward. We have 2 women mayors joining us, replacing both Pete and Jason. I don't have strong opinions about who it should be, but my hope would be we would move forward a newer mayor for learning opportunities and more of a longstanding mayor to just kind of round out those opportunities. I don't really have anyone I'm gunning to get in that seat. I just want us thinking about, we're talking about diversifying a little bit in there. I do think this is an opportunity to bring up a new mayor as well. And so we should think about that.
Yep. And I think you missed it, Lacey. We had the Washington County mayors. So we talked that around last Friday, and I think there is some interest from some of the new mayors to get involved in this activity.
Yeah, it wasn't even there, and I read your guys' mind. Thank you.
Right. We could channel you. We said, this is what Lacey would say. Chris, what you got?
Well, first I would just say that based on my talking with Chris Ford, I think a more sort of female would help achieve what OTC is looking for in terms of a diverse mix. So that sounds like kind of what they're looking for, part of it. So Chris has offered to send me the link to the website and more information about this. So when I get that, we can make that available to you so you can see the information. I think you did that, Chris. You said one of your texts.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this has to do, ultimately we need to do some updates on the bylaws, and that's on us. And it's something to keep in mind. I appreciate it. Take a look at the current ACT membership and take a look at the region and the people who live here and think about how best to match those up. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm running out of time. Darn it. I need to jump us over to the JPAC agenda. Mayor Callaway, did you want to bring up what we've got coming up on JPAC?
Sure. A couple of quick things. First of all, we'll be taking action on projects for the 2023 RTP, which TPAC recommended at their December 2nd meeting. And Chris, Don, and Mike can share information about the policy approach and TPAC comments. The proposed policy is in our WCCC budget. And secondly, Metro has some additional federal funds that has to be spent relatively quickly. So they're adding some funding to projects that were previously selected underway, specifically from Washington County, Fano Creek construction, Aloha sidewalks, and Canyon Road project, plus a few others.
Any questions, comments for Steve? Thanks for keeping it quick, Steve. MPAC.
How about the color commentary just a little bit?
Oh
yeah. So I do have a couple of slides to the regional transportation plan project list is super important. And this is going to be coming to you in February for approval, what we as Washington County submit. So Lake has agreed to go over so that you know just a little bit about what you're going to be seeing later in terms of the origins of this project list. She's going to be real quick. We picked out 8 slides out of like 30 so to highlight this. And Teresa, I think you're sharing your screen. Yeah, there you go. And then I'll give just a little bit of color commentary afterwards. So go ahead, Lake.
Good afternoon. Great. Thanks for sharing the slides. So you just, Chris asked me to present on these briefly to remind you about the 2023 call for projects. If you want to go to the next slide, Teresa. So this is a graphic timeline. The call for projects starts January 6th and runs through February 17th. This is when staff at all the agencies and the coordinating committees will be updating the project list and adding new projects to the project list for the RTP. In March, between March and June, based on the submissions, the information provided by agencies, will do a high-level project assessment and begin the system analysis. The high-level project list assessment will be done before the system analysis. We'll begin to share that out, as well as agency staff will be sharing that. We'll also be conducting community outreach and seeking input from communities to share back to you, decision makers, sort of what is the project list showing us? Are we on track to advance the goals and the vision of the RTP that have been identified by Metro Council and JPACT? Between July and August 23rd is when there'll be the public review draft of the RTP submitted. And that is the official required public review draft in which we will solicit comments on the draft RTP. Next slide, please. So where we are right now is at JPACT, as Mayor Callaway mentioned, on this Thursday, JPACT will be asked to approve the policy framework, which is the guiding framework for the call for projects. And as you all know, from September through December of this month, there was development of the RTP policy framework. We are working with agencies to nail down the revenue forecast. A needs assessment has been conducted, which is providing information on the needs and gaps that the RTP will be addressing. And that is information that the call for projects is responding to. Next slide, please. So the priorities that are identified, and it will be a somewhat of a prioritization process because there, even though there's more funding available through IIJA and other opportunities, inflation is real, and projects will need to be prioritized into 3 buckets. The first 2 buckets are in the constrained priorities. These are the estimated revenues that are estimated to be reasonably expected through 2045. Those 2 buckets are near-term projects from 2023 to 2030, and then long-term priorities from 2031 to 2045. Near-term priorities include projects that already have committed funding and even those that are under construction. those projects have to be substantially completed before they can be removed from the project list. And then strategic project priorities, which will be the same amount revenue forecasted for as the constrained priorities. Those are projects that are really important, but that there are not enough funding to complete. But we do want to keep them on a list. It's also a place to include projects where more planning, project development is needed. And the capital cost targets set the budget for what is available to put into the RTP. Next slide, please. So where do the projects come from? The projects come primarily from transportation system plans, but other adopted type plans as listed here, developed through many years of work by cities, counties, TriMet, ODOT, SMART, other transportation agencies. Projects in the RTP do need to be from an adopted plan because this really reflects the local public engagement and input that has been put into the development of these projects. Next slide, please. What projects are eligible? Projects need to be located on the designated regional system within the MPA boundary, one of the RTP networks that is. There is still opportunity to update those networks. There was quite a few updates that were received earlier in the RTP process, but we know that there's always segments that didn't make it in and that need to be nominated. They need to help achieve the RTP vision goals and targets and policies, which are consistent with local plans. They need to come from adopted plans or strategies, and they must cost at least $2 million or be bundled with like projects. So for example, you could have a bundled project list of arterial roadway crossings. That's a Washington County project, for example, to meet that $2 million threshold. Next slide. So the draft revenue forecast calculations are underway. There's a meeting tomorrow with follow-up meeting with the TPAC workshop. There have been local agencies have been working with Metro to identify locally generated revenues available for maintenance spending, as well as capital projects, and then federal funding that is going to local agencies by subregion. Transit agencies are also working to identify their locally generated revenues, state revenues that go to transit, as well as federal funding that is allocated to transit projects. And then ODOT is working on their federal and state generated revenue forecast for ODOT spending in the region after spending on maintenance, as well as the tolling revenues not yet forecasted. There will be an update at that workshop on the status of the revenue forecast. Next slide. And then just briefly, the policy framework for the 2023 RTP, which is what JPAC will be asked to approve tomorrow, consists of the RTP vision and the 5 goal areas. It also consists of supporting the measurable objectives and targets that are in the draft RTP and supporting policies such as the 2040 growth concept, RTP transportation network maps and modal and design policies, equity focus areas and RTP equity policies, high injury corridors and safety policies, high capacity transit network, which is a draft at this point, and RTP transit policies, which are draft, congestion management network map and RTP congestion management process policies, and then other existing and new draft policies related to pricing and mobility. Next slide, please. The outcomes-based technical analysis, which will be provided to help understand how well the RTP projects are in the draft plan are advancing the goals, will show how these individual projects are advancing the goals, and then also highlight projects that advance multiple goals. And then the system analysis consists of using modeling tools and other tools to develop analysis of the network, of the system, an equity analysis, climate analysis to understand how we're doing towards our greenhouse gas emission goals, and an environmental analysis. Next slide. And then last slide, in terms of the key dates, as I mentioned, the call for projects begins on January 6th. And the online project hub is open for project updates. The first deadline is that the projects must be, all the project information must be submitted by February 17th. And then there will be the technical analysis, as well as public input on the draft list and report findings so that we can have better understanding of project list. Second deadline is May 24th, when each nominating agency's governing body, so that's city councils, elected or appointed boards, commissions, etc. Each transportation agency will nominating agencies governing body must provide a endorsement letter endorsing the specific projects that that agency is bringing forward. And that is also the deadline when any refinements that have been identified based on the technical and community input can be submitted as well. And then in June, the JPAC and the Metro Council will consider the input and the technical findings. Those endorsement letters will also be included as part of the materials to provide approval for moving forward into the public review draft. Hopefully that provides a little bit more or additional information. I don't think this is new to you, but it's always good to get reoriented.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Lake. You did a more thorough job on that, I think, than I would have. So thank you. Should be familiar for those of you that have been mayors for a while, seen this before. There are a couple of new things though. And last week, TPAC asked for more time before making recommendations to JPAC on a couple elements. TPAC members felt like they needed to better understand the state and federal revenue assumptions that were being forecasted then allocated to the different counties. And also TPAC asked for more continued edits and changes on the evaluation measures that are going to be used to evaluate each project. This is the greatest level of detail ever that the projects are going to be evaluated under. And there was a lot of interest in making sure that those criteria are broad enough to reflect the diverse needs across the region and the role that different projects can play. So TPAC is having another special meeting tomorrow to continue to work through this. And we'll be back, I think, for final recommendation to JPAC then in January. I think I bumped it back a little bit. You should also know that all your staff are working really hard on this. There are lots of pages of Excel spreadsheets going around with all your staff confirming revenue, local revenue assumptions and projects. So they're hard at it already. And then the other thing that's new is not only the WCC endorsement, which we will bring to you in February, but each city, there's a lot of local approval. We'll have to figure out how we do that within the WCC since our projects all kind of overlap. So that's a quick version. I'm talking really fast because it's 1:59.
Thanks, Chris. I don't know if we really have time for TPAC comments on this.
No, I think that's good enough. I think I covered it. Really, I think that's what we were going to say anyway. I don't see Mike and Don jumping up and down.
No. Mayor Callaway, MPAC.
Oh yeah, well, yes.
Basically, they're going to call for project's approach according to the work plan, plus more on factors affecting homelessness and their continuing list of ongoing topics. So I think that covers what's going on with MPAC. And then other business or agency updates, since it is 2:00. It's been fun, but in January, unless there's a call to replace Frank, he will be stepping up as the vice chair to take on the chair position. And we will need to figure out nominations for a new vice chair in January.
Mayor Delenn, I've got one other piece of business that I think is kind of time critical, especially since I won't ever be at a future meeting. But I've gotten a sense that from numerous places and reasons, and the mayor's discussed this last Friday. I think a future agenda item should include how critical, like really reviewing the MSTIP program and funding, and the I think there's some serious consideration about whether the funding is going to continue at the same level or not, and or maybe structured differently. And the program has been so critical to our region and to every city in the region. I'd really like to see that worked by all of you in the future, and perhaps a lot more information coming or becoming available, hopefully from the county overall, about their budget and general outlook. So I don't want to take more time on that now, since I know we're really behind, but I really would like to see that discussed soon.
No, thanks, Jason, for reminding me of that. That was one of them we did talk about at the mayor's, is that we do need to look at that whole MSTI impact, the library impact, the other county services, and how we really work together as an integrated team between the cities and the counties. And if the county's looking at budget cuts, we probably would like to all look through those together and make sure that we can come to the table with one kumbaya answer, hopefully. Pete?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody, excuse me, that everybody is aware that with MPAC, we're also very concerned, or have been concerned, about the UGB exchange with Tiger and that ongoing discussion, and the fact that Clackamas County has been against any kind of changes, any kind of progress. So I'm being nasty there. But just want to make sure that transportation and land use are joined at the hip. And when we talk about one, we're missing the boat if we don't talk about the other and the impacts they have on each. So, and I think that discussion takes place primarily at Impact. So just be advised. They meet on Wednesday.
And I think when the mayors got together and talked, I think we found somebody that's interested in picking up your opportunity. So that's a responsibility of the mayors of the area. Stephen, I think, were you going to jump in here and remind me? I need to say thank you for all your service to Jason and Pete. This is their last opportunity to give us a hard time. Well, at least as mayors, I'm sure they will continue to provide us feedback and give us a hard time as they step back into their newly ordained roles as former mayors, is how they'll be introduced from now on.
Indeed.
I prefer citizen.
You will be former mayor if I have anything to say about it, Pete. You and former Mayor Kidd will now be introduced similarly. Jason, Pete, any final words before we all lose quorum?
Just keep doing the really important work and coordinating all these critical issues for our region.
Ditto.
We're fortunate we have a good group that actually, though we may not always agree, we still continue to work together and try to come to something that we can all live with and work forward on, that art of compromise. Anything else, Stephen? Chris?
I did want to just take 1 second. I did hear a question of some concern around county budgeting. And so I wanted to just very quickly, I can point to a couple of resources for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more. There was a board work session held on December 6th regarding county budget update. So if anyone wants to take a quick peek at that, it should be available online. And then I know that our Board of Commissioners is looking to hold a roundtable on January 5th, and I think they'll be getting an update as well regarding budget status moving forward. So those may be helpful bits of background information, and we will definitely want to engage with you all as we think about the future of MSTIP. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think the chair sent out an email I saw to all of us that shared links to the December 6th updates.
Great.
So I think that should be in all the mayor's inboxes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
That, I think we'll close. Sorry, we're a little over, guys.
Well, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll see you
Hey,
in
everyone.
January.
See most of your replacements in January. Bye, everybody.
Feliz Navidad, everybody.
Yeah, bye.
Holidays.